Folks, we are on the cusp of something great. Parametric EQ is becoming more and more accessible. It's being put into budget products like the Moondrop space travel a couple of months ago. Got a lot of hype because of how good its EQ is, but personally, I still prefer wired products. Well, now we've got this, and it's almost good. Hey folks, I'm Mark Ryan, this is Super Review, and this is the new Moondrop Marigold. It is a wired IM, it has parametric EQ built in, it's got a single dynamic driver, and it comes in at the very reasonable price of just $40 US, which is frankly kind of just a perfect recipe for a budget banger IM, but unfortunately there are a couple aspects of this product that I think hold it back. And well, for the past couple of weeks I've had this on hand, been living with it, listening to it, playing with the parametric EQ, and I'm ready to let you know what I think. But before we do that, a quick shout out to Shenzhen Audio who sent the Marigold in for review. If you want to check out the Marigold, of course I'll have it linked in the description down below. But with that said, let's go to the table. We'll talk about build quality, physical aspects of this IM, and of course we'll talk about the sound quality and then some of the EQ functionalities. I want to give you a demonstration because there is some really powerful stuff going on here, and for just 40 bucks, like it's really, oh, I wish it was better. But anyway, here you go. Here is the packaging, nice, small, and compact. There's some pretty interesting artwork actually going on. In fact, if you like the artwork, they give you a very large version of this. Hold on. We got to punch in on there so you can see. I know it's a little bit blown out because it's pretty light, but I don't know. It's an interesting aesthetic they have going on here over at the Moondrop universe. But apart from that artwork, you also get a couple of accessories. Now, it is just a $40 IM, so set your expectations. The accessories are fairly minimal, but useful. You get a little carry case, which I actually like this type of a carry case because it's actually pocketable. You know, you could take these things, you could shove them in your pocket without a case, but it's nice to have something that holds them together, even if it's not going to provide any sort of like crush protection or anything like that. So that's nice. And then of course you do get a full set of ear tips. You get a large, which I have on the earphone right now. You've got a medium and a small. These are actually pretty nice ear tips. Moondrop has been including these with some of their more recent IMs in the past year or so. And I think they are nice ear tips. They're a little bit on the short side, as you can see, which actually ends up not being necessarily the best fit for this earphone, which we'll talk about in a little bit. It's actually why I'm using the large ear tips on this one, but they are generally just a nice quality silicone, and I like to see that. Now, that brings us into talking about the build quality of the IM itself, and here's where, unfortunately, some of my kind of big issues with this earphone are going to come into place. So one, just note it does have a fixed wire, right? The cable, unlike a lot of other IMs, doesn't come off on this. And that's for me okay, because this is the point of this thing is to have this DSP cable with parametric EQ built into it, so you can play around with the tuning and stuff on it. And if you were taking off the cable, you wouldn't be able to do that. So that's not so much the big issue for me. For me, the bigger issue, especially with this cable, is the fact that it is an asymmetrical cable, which I'm not really a big fan of as a style. Let me see if I can show you. Basically, you can see here, I have the Y split, right? And what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna pull it down and show you that the left side of the cable is just much shorter than the right side of the cable. And this is not an entirely unprecedented thing. There are other portable products out there that give you asymmetric cables. I'll just say this, like generally, I'm not personally a fan of it. I guess I'll show you what it looks like on my head. I'm not going to talk about the fit and comfort at this point, so I'll just kind of hang these loosely over here. But you can see that you've got a shorter cable on this side and a longer cable that allows the cable, I guess, just to be like kind of left biased across your body. I don't know if that's necessarily better or worse. I feel like it just makes it a little bit awkward for me. So I'm not a big fan of that. But for me, honestly, the bigger issue isn't the fact that it is asymmetrical. And that's more of just like a stylistic preference. The bigger issue I have with it is just how asymmetrical it is. The right side cable is so stinking long. Again, let me give you this demonstration and just show you like how much extra cable there is dangling around here. Like that's kind of wild. Like again, I mentioned this is not an unprecedented strategy of especially with portable things. So here is a Sony MH755 just for comparison's sakes. And again, I'm trying to do this as elegantly as possible, but failing catastrophically, as you can tell. But yeah, again, you can see over here, we've got a longer cable on the right side. So it gives you this asymmetrical look, but this isn't like that much longer. This is not like literally a foot longer. It's like maybe, I don't know, 6 inches longer than the other side. So I don't know why they did that here with the Marigold. It basically just means that this is a little bit unwieldy to wrap up, but also just kind of cumbersome when you're wearing it. Just like a little bit too much there. Now the rest of the cable is, I guess I should talk about the build quality on it. It's a nice cable. It's actually kind of soft. It is all silicone, so it's not like a, a nice fancy IEM braid or anything like that. But I think it is actually a pretty well-behaved cable. You can see it doesn't have any particularly strong memory or anything like that. So it's a nice cable otherwise. It's just I don't love the asymmetrical design, and I really don't love how asymmetrical it is. Like, this is look at that. Why is it that long? Anyway, now I guess I'll just highlight down here. It does have USB-C connection on the bottom end. You can't plug this into a 3.5 mil port on your phone or your digital audio player. You're gonna have to use the DSP end of the cable here, which is actually kind of the point of this IM. But before we get into talking about that functionality, I did want to talk about these earpieces, which I'll highlight are nice and small and compact. They are a bullet style fit. Kind of reminds me of the Moondrop Quark or the Quarks, depending on which generation you got. And there you can see the small dynamic driver inside of it. And, a lot of people like this fit of an IM, and I guess I'll actually plug it into my ears now as we're talking about fit, but to highlight kind of another concern that I have with the construction of this IM, right? So it is a bullet style, so it's just kind of plugged straight in. The other thing about this is that it just goes straight down, right? It doesn't, even though I was wrapping it over my ear when I was doing just kind of like the cable demonstration, that was convenience purposes. It does not actually work that way. And while you could ostensibly wear it cable over, I could wrap it over, let's see, and plug it into my ear, right? That does actually technically work. The downside, or the reason why you can't really do that, is because, let me see if I can highlight this, the nozzles are at an angle, right? You see this is pointing a certain direction. So this wants to fit a certain direction. And now what you see me holding here in my hand is actually the left earpiece. Even though you see in my ear, I'm also wearing an earphone in my left ear because this is the right earpiece. In order to wear it over ear like this, you have to switch left and right. And unfortunately, there's no option in the software to switch the left and the right channels, which is what would allow me to do this. Now, for the most part, like most people, if you're not like listening to the same music all the time, you actually probably won't really notice the difference if you switch up your left and right channels. If you're playing video games, you are obviously going to notice. If you're watching movies, you might notice. Music that you're not familiar with, you probably won't notice. But if it's music you listen to all the time, it might actually sound kind of weird if you switch up the left and the right channels, which was my experience with these IMs. In fact, the first time I pulled them out and listened to them, there's no like clear, let me see if there are even clear left and right indicators on these things, because I could not find or could not see them with my naked eye. In fact, yeah, I don't see clear left and right indicators. The first time I used these IEMs, I put them in my ears backward, not knowing which way they were supposed to go. And I thought the earphones actually sounded kind of bad. But it turned out it was just because the left and right channels were mixed up, and I'm so familiar with the music I was listening to that was not such a good mix. So anyway, suffice to say, these things are like, I don't know, I'm of two minds. Like, I know some people like to wear IEMs this way, or they prefer sort of the bullet style earphone down. For me, I don't like it as much for two reasons. One, it's just not as stable, right? You get more cable pulling on this. You maybe get more microphonics because when you wear it over your ear like this, your ear actually ends up damping some of the microphonic sounds that would otherwise travel through the cable. And then the other issue that I have with this is that because it's going in this way and my ear is right here, the stem ends up running into my ear. So it doesn't fit as deep into my ear as it would if I was able to wear it over my ear. And that's why I mentioned I'm wearing the larger ear tips on this IEM right now. It's because I need it to fit, even though it's giving me kind of a shallow fit. So something that you're gonna have to be aware of. Apart from that, I don't know, there's not really much else to talk about the build quality. I mean, I think it looks kind of cool. I think the earpieces look nice. They're built nice. They are, of course, made out of a plastic. This is all a plastic over here too. But I don't know, it's fine for a $40 IM. I wish there was an option in the software to reverse left and right. I feel like it would solve kind of a lot of my complaints there, but unfortunately there is not, at least as of the moment of this recording. Now, I guess kind of on that topic of the software, I did want to give you a brief demonstration of what you can do with the app. So I'll plug it in and hopefully all of this goes according to plan, because I want to give you a demo of the Moondrop app. Now, there's not a lot of options for the Marigold. With some of the other TWS, there are more settings. The Marigold is basically just going to give you tuning options, right? Here's where I would expect to find maybe a switch left and right channels option. Unfortunately, it's not here, but there are some tuning options. So we've got a couple of presets, not very many actually. I'll talk about what these sound like in a little bit, but there's just reference, there's 3A and FPS. FPS one seems to be very clearly targeted at making you hear footsteps, I guess, in a first-person shooter. I don't know if it works. I don't really play FPS games, so I can't tell you how effective that is, but there was an attempt, and I think that's interesting to see. The 3A one, I don't know what 3A is a reference to, but I will say that it's a pretty extreme tuning preference. Now, if you want to dial in your own tuning preferences, that's where this online interactive DSP is. So again, you punch into that, and then up here in the upper right corner, you tap these 3 bars, and then you get access to the full parametric EQ suite, which is, it's actually really pretty impressive what you can do here, right? You can even like load in different targets. If you wanted to auto EQ this IM to sound like Laputa, which is a headphone that got recalled before it even came out, you can use an auto EQ. Look at this, I'm auto EQing, there we go, the Marigold to sound like this headphone that doesn't exist yet. So that's actually kind of cool, right? And of course, you don't have to use auto EQ. You can just go in here and change these EQ values manually. You've got access to the frequency, the Q value, and the gain. I believe, let me make sure, I took notes on this. I believe it supports 6 filters, and they can go up 12 dB and down 18 dB. At least that's what the web interface let me do. Yeah, look at that, plus 12 and minus 18. So that is a big range of being able to edit the EQs. You can basically make these things sound kind of exactly the way that you want, provided you're good at parametric EQ. And I understand that parametric EQ is a big learning curve. Not everyone is going to be able to jump into these things and make them sound the way they want, but if you're good with it, or if you want to get good with it, you've got the tool here. And this is frankly just a lot of fun to play with. However, this is where we're going to get into my other kind of big issue with these earphones. It's also kind of, it's a big limitation for how much I can enjoy this product. And it's that when I write the EQ to the Marigold, there is a very loud popping sound every freaking time. And I want to be like listening to music, making changes, hit right to, hit the apply button, have it change the sound of the Marigold, and then kind of like evaluate that change in real time. But because it pops every time I do it, I have to take the earphones out of my ear before I do it. Let me see if I can even demonstrate this for you. I don't know if this is going to work. Actually, let me show you this. So I'm going to hold this up to the microphone, and maybe we'll get a pop, maybe we won't. But basically every time I hit auto EQ. So I have to play music, which unfortunately means, here, let me turn down the volume so I'm not doing copyright violation here. But while it's playing music, you hear that pop? It's really sharp and really loud, and like honestly actually painful, which means I feel like this is the sort of thing that they really should figure out how to resolve this issue. Hopefully they can with the firmware update. But as of right now, I don't even see an option to update the firmware with this app. So it's just really kind of a big hindrance to me enjoying using this product. But I guess with that said, let's move on and talk about the sound quality on it, because apart from the fact that it makes this obnoxiously loud popping sound, it actually sounds really good. In fact, this is the tuning that you get with the Marigold straight out of the box. And this is a reasonably well-tuned IM. I think the dynamic driver in here is a beryllium coated dynamic driver. I don't know if it's the exact same as what's in the Moondrop Lawn, the original Lawn, but it's a good sounding earphone, and this is a good sounding default tuning. It's got a little bit of a bass boost, as you can see down here, but not a giga bass boost. You don't have quite as sharp of a contrast here in the mid-range as you might with like a Harman target, so it's not quite as contrasty, but you do still get a little bit of extra emphasis here in kind of the upper mid-range area, which, you could maybe even describe this as like Harman light. It's like a little bit warmer than you would expect of a typical Harman, actually maybe quite a bit warmer, but it's just generally a very well-tuned IM. Like, it sounds natural, vocals sound good. I would say in terms of like the technical behaviors, it sounds relatively incisive and well-defined, to the point that, like, I don't know, even out of the box, like if you don't want to play around with EQ, this thing just frankly sounds fantastic. I guess I should highlight for you briefly what it sounds like with the other EQs. So I mentioned that there are some presets in here. Let me pull up. This is the 3A preset. which is a lot warmer, a lot bassier, a lot thicker, but actually ended up sounding not bad. Like this looks a little over warm for my taste, but when I was listening to it, I was like, it's actually not bad. I definitely prefer the stock tuning versus this, but it looks like they were going for like a tilted diffuse field sound signature with a bass boost, and they probably just went maybe a little bit overkill on the tilt, but some people will definitely like that. And then like I mentioned, there is that FPS tuning, which I don't think is tuned for music. You can see here you've got this big boost right here, which is where I think a lot of people say the footstep sounds are. So that's probably why this is tuned that way. But this is otherwise like a weird tuning for music. But again, the tuning out of the box is very good, and you have access to that parametric EQ. So you could really make this kind of sound any way that you want to. Unfortunately, it's kind of limited by a couple of things. So I want to love this product. I want to enthusiastically recommend it to people. But because of just the kind of obnoxious cable length on this thing and that popping, that just kind of makes it not very usable. Unfortunately, I don't like this product. It's very close to being a good product, but the Marigold as it is right now, maybe even with the firmware update, they can't fix the cable with the firmware update, but it's close, it's close. A firmware update can make this definitely easily a 3-star product, but as it is right now, I don't love it. If you want to check it out anyway, of course, I've got it linked in the description down below. And while you're down there, if you haven't yet, well, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, ding the YouTube bell, join me on Discord, also linked down below, and I'll catch you in the next super review. Cheers.
Joined with the force of reviews, we now have the tools to brave the misleading world of audio fools. Hey, this review is super, and so are you. Grab your headphones, sniff a graph, and share your thoughts in this pursuit. Let's begin with the theatrics.